I saw the FDA ban CBD or put restrictions on CBD. I'm curious about that for the food ingredients and nutraceutical space. I'm curious about your feedback on that, Billy.
Well, I haven't read that article. When did it come out?
The 6th, a couple of days ago.
Couple of days. And you're saying that they banned CBD input?
They put a restriction on the CBD being used inside of food and ingredient as an ingredient.
Is that for a short period of time until more research is done, or are they claiming that that's where they're going to stand?
They're claiming that that's where they're going to stand.
And I think that's related. I think that's particularly isolate and related to the fact that Epidiolex is the epilepsy drug has isolate in it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That because it's a drug now, it's not used as a nutraceutical or an ingredient. And that's isolating CBD as just the only cannabinoid that they called out, but because that's the only one that's the Epidiolex.
Right.
But they're advising to not put it on any labels or in any products, consumables.
Yeah, I look forward to reading that a little bit more. I'm all for them controlling CBD myself, to set specific guidelines so that the public can trust that bottle that you're buying and knowing it's not coming from, somewhere else and doesn't even have CBD in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that myself. Long term, I'd like to see it be able to be used and added into any and everything, especially as a farmer, processor. If you want, I can go a little bit about my background and what got me here today.
Let's go ahead and get started.
I'm by no means a public speaker, though I do it quite often. I'm just a hillbilly from the North Carolina mountains who grew up loving plants. I started off being drugged behind a tractor smelling dirt and diesel, and those two combinations of smell have stayed with me my whole life. I love it. So I left the farm, we came to the big city, and I started playing with plants and doing the things that I was taught on the farm. I was treating our urban landscape plants, which are now continual crops, quite different than the tobacco, the soybean and corn and all the group. We were dairy farmers. If anybody was a dairy farmer or knew anything about dairy farmers, we have no free time. We don't go on vacation for years. Sometimes, maybe lifetimes, we don't even leave our county because everybody wants the milk and all the cows want to be milked. So came to the big city and got into the world of landscaping, became very large in landscaping. But within the third year of landscaping, I realized that the very things and the foundation of what I was doing as a child wasn't working with these continual crops, the azaleas, the rhododendrons, the oaks, the maples, all the things that were in the urban environment. And I soon realized that the bypass drugs, or the drugs, or as I call them, the petrochemicals that I was using on the farm to make things real quick so we could harvest, bigger, better crop, wasn't working with sustainable plants. So I started playing with organics, I guess before organics were cool, back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and then went on to develop 63 organic formulas and registered them with different states all across the country. And I started focusing on the soil food web, soil restoration, restoring the soil in the backyards of America, as we call it, because when you bulldoze and destroy that land, and then you come out and you put 10, 10, 10, triple 17, 18, 24, 12, or Miracle Grow or whatever else on there to make those plants in your yard, your garden, your flowers, your grass flourish. Everybody wanted to see results. Well, you would see results if you're using a lot of iron and using a lot of nitrogen. And it was a show me results type world when you're in the landscape business and you're on the weed management. I always try to tell people, look, weeds belong to your grass doesn't, because it's an act of God, Mother Nature. The weeds, and earth is man-made. So I started getting away from the chemicals and started doing the organics and coming up with my own formulas because there wasn't anything readily available on the market. I invented or created granulars and liquids and sprayables and humics and fulvics and the bacillus family, and started incorporating all this stuff from the soil field web to restore our soils. Then I became quite well known because I was doing a lot of places. I had over 5,000 properties I managed. And I started getting to where my properties were looking good in the drought and the heat of the summer, while others were getting toasted and burnt out. Mine was still flourishing. And it wasn't because I was smarter than anybody. I was just going back to nature, going back to what, Mother Nature, God and Mother Nature intended, to let those plants feed from the soil, the foundation of all life. Everything we have and everything will be comes from the soil. So I stayed focused on that. And then that led me to radio, and then I had the #1 radio show in the southeastern United States. It went from Maine down to the Caribbean. Did that for years. Then did a couple other radio shows. Then I was the organic gardener on the PBS TV series For Your Home for 5 years. You can still see those shows airing from time to time. I'll get a call, hey Bill, I just saw you on TV. But most people, then I was short hair, no beard, no mustache. I was playing the part of trying to look the part for the public, not look like that I was a mountain man from way back up in the hills, which is nothing wrong with that. But then that led to the Biltmore estate, where I saved the Biltmore estate. Then I went into heavy into roses and got the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, Queens Botanical Garden, the Peggy Rockefeller Botanical Garden. Then I was sought after by Peter Bills, which was a rosarian for Queen Elizabeth. And that led, he asked me to create an organic formula for roses. I got heavily involved in roses, and I created one for him called Good Morning, Good Afternoon, and Good Night Roses, which addressed good morning is when we wake them up in the spring. Good afternoon is how we care for them in the heat of the summer. And good night is how we put them back to bed in the winter. And got to do my radio show live from there and meet Queen Elizabeth, and my formula got used there. And so all of that was just from, a country boy pulling behind, planting tobacco, who fell in love with dirt and later on found a way to turn dirt into soil. And then whenever they legalized hemp, I had a store at the time. I shut the store down. I quit dealing with people around the country on turf and home management, in other words, the backyards of America, and went headfirst into hemp because I knew it's where I needed to be, where I wanted to be, and where I'd spend the rest of my life. I've consulted with people from onions to, they also, one of my nicknames is the Tomato Man. My biggest tomato plant was 18 foot. I got pictures of it. It looked like an apple tree. I love tomatoes, always have. But I just love plants, and that's what got me into consulting, and then from there into like where we're at here today. I by no means probably can answer all of y'all's questions, but at the foundation of what my answers are, that come from the soil food web, the foundation of all life, our soil, and then all the things that we have to do, as I call the Paul Harvey effect, the rest of the story. It's more complex than just feeding, watering our plants. It's helping understand that microclimate that they're in, because what's good here may not be good next door, or in the back, or in the front, or the field down by the river, or the field on the side of the hill. And now I'm talking like that guy you were talking about earlier that couldn't stop.
No. I saw you coming to an end, so I took myself off mute, and I don't think that happened this morning. And I love Joe's story. I love it. And so, but you just know when we ask, when we start the story, that that's what we're talking about, and that's what it is. And so, okay, well, I'm really excited. For those of you that are just logging on, I'm really excited about having Billy here and all of his experience that we just went through. He's got a lot, so please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will get to them. That way we can, there are quite a few questions that came in as you guys registered that I'd love to bring up and give Billy an opportunity to address. Also, Billy, if somebody needs to reach out to you or wants to reach out to you, how do they do that? Can you add your,
We can add that, you can reach me at billystyles217@gmail.com.
I'll share it in the chat for everybody.
Yes, and then the phone number 704-361-4088. If you call me and I haven't called you back in 48 hours, I did not get the message. I call everybody back.
That's awesome. Okay, so what do you think the most pressing issues are about sustainability?
Know how.
Okay.
How do you create sustainability? And
Yeah.
we talk about sustainability in our crops. We're talking about sustainability for all plants or at home, where, it depends on what you're working on and what crop you're planting. If you're planting an annual crop, it's going to be hard to do sustainable unless you're doing no-till or something in that nature to build that sustainability. If I'm coming through with a plow, a disc, I'm destroying that sustainability each and every time.
How do you think we bridge that gap?
I think you teach, people how to sustainability. I guess has a lot of different meanings, but as it relates to growing, I think that you teach people how to. What do they want to do? You want sustainability, meaning you don't want to plow, you want to dish, you want to use the benefits of the protozoas, the invertebrates, and everything else of the soil food web to live and to flourish without being disturbed. Is that sustainability for you? Is it sustainability by creating a hemp fiber or crops that are, more sustainable as far as all the things that they add to the whole world?
Yeah. Talk to me about the experience and the benefit, or I guess what you've seen within the cannabis and hemp industry specifically in regards to the sustainability and the organic farming.
Yeah, well, I'm all about organic farming. Organics have been here since the beginning of time. Who waters the jungle? Who feeds the meadows? Who puts superphosphate on the wildflowers of the world? No one. The soil food web. To restore that is to restore the ability to grow monster plants. Everybody wants to know why my plant's always bigger than everyone else's. It's because I'm not forcing them to do something through steroids, high nitrogens, the miracle of miracle growth. It's giving them all the access of life through the soil. I think in the hemp world, organics. Look, the reason I got into hemp is because I helped poison America. My daddy's did is we fed America with the things that we put on our plants that have been decade after decade after decade been banned by the government, which we were putting it on your food. We didn't know no better. That's what we were guided to do. That's what we were told to do as we had our questions of what this disease was or what this was. But I think in hemp, one of the biggest problems in hemp and organics is understanding organic and understanding and taking the chance. A lot of people don't want to take the chance. I had a group this year that decided they didn't want to go USDA. I try to guide everybody to become a USDA certified hemp grower. And for me, it helps me regain some dignity to know that I'm providing a plant to the American consumer or to the world that is pure, that has nothing on it. And so I'm very strict on any and everything that touch my plants and anything that gets close to them. So we have to teach people how to grow organically and have confidence that it can perform. Because
Meet them at the.
You saw some of my pictures.
Yeah, meet them at the farm. Right.
At the farm. I do consult with farmers everywhere, both via phone, pictures and or visits. I mostly do the visits, and all of my farms that I visit with, I do every other week. Some I do every week because they want me there every week. And then I come in and I'm sort of like a bad drill sergeant that tells them everything that they need to know, but they may not be happy to hear it.
Okay, so we just had a really great question come in. How does an individual farmer look at their own system for transition to organic?
Ask that one more time. I'm not sure.
How does an individual farmer look at their own systems to transition to organic farming? To organic farming. Yep.
Well, first you find follow the guidelines of the USDA certification program. They're going to get you in line. Of course, then finding products that are that can be used, that are approved for use in that program. They can help you with that. Also, there's a master list there. But talking to someone like myself who can, visit your farm, look at all your microclimates, look at the lay of the land, look at your water resources, and then start guiding you step by step on the things that you need to do from an input standpoint to the maintenance, preventative disease control, preventative insect management, and those type of things.
Okay, speaking of insect and mold, there was a question on best practices or genetics to avoid mold, specifically in Virginia, similar to climates, both CBD and fiber.
In fiber also, yeah, we're doing a lot of fiber tests all across the country right now currently, because I'm heavily involved in opening up a plant for fiber production in South Carolina. Mold, if I'm growing a crop that has tendency, whether powder mildew, downy mildew, whatever the mold is, if I already know that, then I should be applying a preventative microdose treatment as I'm going along. Also should be aware of how I'm watering, how the dew's laying in my area. When's the sun hitting my crop to dry that dew up? What are the contributing factors that are causing that mold, not just using a formula, an active ingredient to kill it. And then if you do have mold, making sure that you're using multiple active ingredients so that you're not getting immune and it not working, and then all of a sudden it's too late. It costs you a lot more to be curative, a lot less to be preventative. So I put people on from day one, from the greenhouse to harvest. We're on a proactive, preventative approach to everything that we do. We're not waiting for things to happen. We know they're going to happen, and we're going to start working on them before they do. I do tagging and all of that for insect monitoring and so on and so forth.
Okay, I did see that in your pictures. That was pretty gnarly. A huge, must be sticky paper full of bugs that you're testing to see what bugs are being attracted, I'm assuming.
When they're coming in, I've already started treating for them before they get there, before their cycle starts. But each year those cycles can be off a little bit. And as you go to different geographical areas, that cycle of birth and coming to eat, everybody's got to eat. They got to eat, and they want what we're growing. We just don't want them to. So we got to try to be ahead of them. So we start our treatments a long time before we ever see the first insect.
Awesome. Okay. So another great question is, do you have any particular techniques that you use to restore soil health that is in really bad shape?
Say that first part again.
Any particular, do you have any particular techniques that you use to restore soil health that's in really bad shape?
To source soil health?
Restore it.
Or restore.
Improve it. Uh-huh.
And as you can tell, I have probably been used a lot of tractors and a lot of weed because my hearing is not quite what it used to be. And I'm a disabled vet also. So they prior to the pandemic, they said, Billy, we want to check your hearing. And I says, okay. And they came back, and the doctor came back, and he had another doctor with him. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm in big trouble. And he says, we got something unusual here. He says, you've got supersonic hearing. He says, we've never seen anybody be able to hear the tones that you hear. And I says, are those low tones? And he says, yes. And I said, wow, that explains a lot. Because I'm always telling people, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And they're always saying, no, I didn't hear nothing. But when he said, he explained it this way. He says, if you get in a room and there's women in there, you probably can't hear a word they're saying. And he says, because of the pitch of the voice. So it was
I've heard that a few times from people. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, the pandemic, they was going to check my ears out further and put give me some hearing aids and all that with those low tones. But the pandemic has still got me here struggling to hear what you say from time to time. But if I'm going to restore soil, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it. I'm going to do core samples. I got a 4-foot coring tool. I'll go down. It's not just finding what's in the root zone, but as my water and things leave that root zone and go down, are they hitting what I call tractor compaction, which is way down in the subsoil that has been run over for years and years and is heavily compacted, but we come and till the top, but that subsoil is still heavily compacted, that deadpan, as some people would call it, down there. Am I getting drainage through there, or is my water backing up down there and coming up? The porosity, the flocculation and crumbling of the soil is very, very important from day one, what I see and how I need to get to where I can keep that in. Now here in Charlotte, we've had a tremendous amount of rain. And so I had one of my farms going out creating air holes in the soil so that one, we could have some breathing going on, because the sedimentation of the red clay that we have in our area here, even if you have good porosity, if you have, multiple feet of rain like we've had, it settles it back down into compaction. So I evaluate the soil as it stands that day, and then I start putting inputs in to support life, humics and fulvics and different matters of things that we put in based on what that soil is. Is it blackjack? Is it Carolina slate? Is it sandy loam? What is it? And then from there I start, because each place is different. And then it's history, what's been put on it. And I usually like to go back, probably 25 years. And I'll talk to the farmer and give me 25 years back up to date. Let's talk about everything that you've done to it. Then I excuse myself from them and head out to the field for a few hours and come back and tell them the good or the bad.
Okay. Well, great question, you guys. Again, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to throw them in here in the chat. I can definitely get to them. I really appreciate those of you that have dropped them in so far. So talk to me about hemp industry in itself. How has it really changed over the last 60 years, and where do you see it heading?
Well,
maybe sum the 60 years up, because it's a lot that's changed, but yeah, what maybe opportunity?
There's a lot that's changed. I don't think we should have ever had it illegal. I think we should be wise enough to know how to control it, or how to implement things that we can put into place to help the law enforcement recognize what they need to recognize, let the hemp market develop itself as it has before. We're making judgments now, the FDA, on whether or not we can put CBD in this or that, where it's been in those products thousands and thousands of years ago, and is still being put into them constantly. Sort of like the USDA, when they were the gatekeeper, they were tasked with managing the hemp world, but in managing it, the people who were writing the rules, I don't think, were agronomically aware of the cycles of life, or they were influenced by the fear of THC, and that's why they're trying to cut the harvest quicker. But I think the future of it is going to continue to explode. When 2019 came, it was every farmer, everybody in the world. It was the modern day gold rush. It don't matter if you'd ever had a shovel in your hand, ever planted a seed in the world, you wanted to get in on it. And when we got in on it, there was a lot of failure. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of people who did, even farmers. Being a farmer myself, this is not a row crop. It had special needs, and so I think a lot of people got in trouble, lost a lot of crops. And a lot of people made promises that just weren't sustainable. They weren't real. They were on the to come, but nobody knew how to get them to come. And so, in my mind, I think we took a big hit. I think that correction, I'm glad it started in 2020, because it's continued in my mind to get better. A lot of people are out. I wish everybody could be in it, but hey, with the people being out, it does make it a more consolidated market. We're down to 100 and some thousand acres nationwide. That's nothing. But yet there's still excessive inventory on the marketplace, and a lot of that inventory has not been handled correctly, packed correctly, harvested correctly, and now it's being dumped. And then you have the brokers in between. Sorry for any brokers I hope I don't offend, but the brokers step in and start being the negotiator from the farmer to the end user. And somewhere in there, you've got to beat that farmer up to get it down low enough so that you can make money to sell it to this end user. Now the farmer's suffering even more because he didn't have the opportunity to even make his money back. You know, I said this back in 2017. I said, when this comes out, I'll stay focused on pharmaceutical. I want to be the best there is. I want nobody's crop to come anywhere close to mine. I want everything in it to be grown through mineralization, not fertilization. I want that plant to have the power that it was meant to have and does have, and I want that to be in the consumer's reach of consuming it, pure. So I think that anyone who's growing, who will grow and set their sights on doing it good, everything matters. Everywhere you step matters. Everything you put in it matters. And bring that to market and then learn how to harvest it. I mean, growing can be tough for folks, but then you get into processing it. Oh my God, that's a whole different world. And then you got to get to working out story. Well, who am I going to sell it to? So there's some people in the marketplace who's doing it right. You're aware of a group that I work with who is in Joe, which is a new patented USDA certified patented technology that uses no solvents. Those oils are going to be more sought after by the pharmaceutical grade. I don't believe that Mrs. Johnson, now Mrs. Johnson is the lady who would call about her weeds all the time, and we use her name for everything. So if you hear me say Mrs. Johnson, so you know, Mrs. Johnson don't want to be seen in a smoke shop because she might see one of her neighbors coming out of that shop and think she's in there buying marijuana or something, when in reality, she just want to fight some anxiety or some stress or some arthritis or whatever other reason she may be wanting to take it. I think that they find that comfort in the pharmaceutical world, in the pharmacies, whether it be the Walgreens of the world or the independents of the world. Someplace that group of people can move into and acquire education first, because a lot of there's not enough. I call that to Paul Harvey too. You know, in the grass and turf and flower world, it's not just 10-10-10 or my Growzilla or my Jackhammer, that's the names of products I created, or Singe, which was an organic Roundup that I created. My Growzilla had the Bacillus family in it and had all the components of restoring soil life. But if you take that and you use 1 cup of it, it doesn't change your world. You have to continue to follow through with that recipe. And it's just like if no matter how great you want your turf or what golf course you are, and I've done a lot of golf courses, it's the formula's there. If the cultural impact comes in and is incorrect, then that crop fails. Doesn't matter what the crop ate. It's just the same with hemp or anything else. If you're going out there and abusing your hemp mechanically or through cultural hoeing or whatever, then you're going to affect it.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions that have come in. Real quick, what are your thoughts about biochar?
I created a product called Amazon Soil, and Amazon Soil was probably about my 8th soil blend that I created. My one that I had in Ace Hardware's sold out on a regular basis. That was back in my day of when I was trying to push all my products to the world. But then I created one called Amazon Soil, and I called it Amazon Soil because some of the greatest soils in the world are in the Amazon, and they are within the swaths of some of the chars from the generations past. And I love biochar. I think it needs to be aged, and I think you need to understand it, but I recommend it for anything and everything planted. But there's a lot of biochar out there that's bad, that's no good, shouldn't even be on your place. And you got to make sure that it's in moderation. As I sold my biochar on my Amazon soil, if a customer came in and bought Amazon soil, and I knew they had 10,000 acres or 10,000 square feet, and they wanted to use it as an amendment in their soil once they aerated and it goes down into the hole, and they come back in and they wanted to buy more, I would tell them they didn't need no more. And I had people get upset with me because I wouldn't sell them more, because they were so excited about what happened, they wanted to put more out. And more was not an answer. And you can put too much biochar out. You don't just using it and using it and using it and using it, use it, you establish it. Because those treatments can last over 1,000 years. And soil restoration is key. I like biochar.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I've been a fan of biochar. We've got a couple of people that have been on to speak about it. It's exciting stuff, but everything I hear is make sure that it's the good biochar. You know, that there's definitely a difference. Okay, so question is, do you have confidence that dual or tri-crop harvest for grain, fiber, and CBD will be a solution at large scale? And next question is, won't we need specific genetics for certain applications?
I think the genetics, I think we'll have the answer to that probably at the end of this season, because we've got hundreds of crops of different genetics in the fiber world currently growing and testing. So I can come back to you with that. And what was that first question again?
Do you have confidence that a dual tri-crop harvest for grain, fiber, and CBD will be a solution at large scale?
Absolutely, and I think anybody that doesn't believe that is not going to be part of its success. I think we have to be pioneers. I think we have to step out and start creating, like we're doing in South Carolina, create the facility that can bring the supply chain here before anybody buys it. Because once they come into our warehouse and you see hundreds of thousands of square feet of some of the most gorgeous fiber or microgreen fiber or all the other herd and products that we create there, will you want to invest in the technology to make that a board, wall board, or bioplastics? And so I think it's going to be bigger than CBD ever hoped to be. I think it's going to be the replacement plant of the world as we move forward. It sure is. It can clean our soils. We can clean up all of our DDT from our years of tobacco. You know, I think I said this to you. This is the new tobacco of the South down here where I'm at. But it's. I think it replaces everything. But we have to let it replace everything and not be afraid of it. But you know, there's a lot of push against it from the petrochemical suppliers. But we will win.
Okay, another question is, do you use compost tea? And if so, what do you use to make your compost?
I've never been a big fan of compost tea. I look at it this way: if I make compost tea, why don't I just create a healthy soil that's producing compost tea 24/7 in the soil? So I'm adding compost tea to a soil that doesn't have the ability to create its own tea. So if I'm in the early stages of soil restoration, would I be putting that in as a food source for the microbial population? Absolutely. If I'm doing or creating and making worm tea, I have done a lot of making it. Even though I'm not a big fan of it, I have made it. I have used it in restoration projects. I like, if I'm using compost, there's a place here in Charlotte called Compost Central. Compost Central. Man, I got me some stuff at Compost Central and it's free. I says, really? Free of what? No, Billy, it's free. We didn't have to pay for it. I said, well, where did it come from? They says, well, you know, they come by your house and they pick up all the trash. I said, what was in that trash? Well, what do you mean what was in the trash? Well, where did that tree come from? Was that tree did it have imidacloprid in it? A systemic insect control that's toxic, the great bee killer, the one that I worked with for environmental science. Was that in that tree and you're cutting those limbs off? Now you're turning it into the compost that you're using in your garden. That those are going to leach out and become part of that area. I don't, so when it comes to compost, what kind of compost is it? What are you making a compost out of? Just because you compost it doesn't mean it come out the other side pure every time if it's got harsh chemicals in it. But I am a fan of recycling our waste, but understanding where it gets recycled to.
Okay, I agree. This is another part that I don't understand, so I have a hard time asking some of these questions to dive into compost tea and the biochars. But for any of you that,
yeah. So if I have worm manure, and I put them in a cheesecloth and I tie them up, I can then come in and make tea out of that. Okay, and squeeze and juice in that tea. And now that tea is great for plants. but it's going to be used pretty quick. At one time in my life, probably 30 years ago, I was going to have a tea express, I'll just put it that way, where landscapers and homeowners could come and drive up, fill the truck up, and I would produce the tea fresh. And you would have to go apply it fresh because it starts degrading pretty quick. And, you know, that's why I turned away from that and I started focusing on putting living components or bacteria and stuff in the soil to help it restore itself.
Okay, that's great. Let me look at another one. And again, anybody have any questions, feel free to jump in, but I've got a whole, go ahead, Billy.
No, go ahead, I'm good.
Where do you see the market for the industrial side of the industry really going over the next 5 to 10 years? And I know you kind of said earlier, summing it up, but as far as like, if you don't believe it, you're crazy. But where do where do you see as far as growth, maybe some of the challenges that you anticipate?
I think the challenges is in my opinion, not that that's the fact, but in my opinion is believe before it happens. You have to believe. Someone needs to step out and believe in this industry and help develop it. And that's what we're trying to do in South Carolina. Is acquire the machine. We already have the land. We already have 115,000 square foot facility. We already have the concrete facility in the back where we can make hemp blocks and other things. We already have the know-how from seed to marketing to distribution to the rail there. We've got everything, but we have to have the product before people want to do it. I believe that that we have to be leaders and believe in it before it happens. And I think over the next 5 years, I would say within 5 years, it's wide open. We're setting ours up to be each processing, each fiber plant is within has farming within a 90-mile circumference of it to support that facility. And then our business plan is to branch that off into each one of those throughout the southeastern United States, and of course beyond. But you know, we're not gonna go beyond until we be here. But I think we can. I have access to hundreds of thousands of acres. I have access to all the farmers that wants to grow it. All it is now is I got to get the plant put up, and me and a couple of gentlemen are working hard and heavy on trying to get that finalized. But there's products that are in the market. You know, it's just you have to. I think you have to have the funding to bridge that gap from available supply to the Georgia Pacifics of the world coming in and joining in. So we're doing some early talks prior to this with groups like that, so that we can try to bring everything together. But I believe I think it's a great future.
It's exciting, very exciting. Okay, back to the soil. I love learning about this stuff, so you guys keep the questions coming in. Do you prefer no-till and cover crops?
Well, there we go with cover crops again. I've never been a big fan of cover crops as it relates to, well, it depends on what the cover crop's doing. If the cover crop is working for nitrogen fixation, if we're using it for a till in to then feed the microbial population for that season or prior to that, or is it being used for weed suppression? Now, if it's being used for weed suppression, I'm all a fan of it. You can't control weeds unless you understand weeds. And you saw a lot of my pictures there and you didn't see no weeds in them, unless I was showing you areas that were troubled with weeds. All the rows of hundreds of acres were weedless, pretty much. But weeds are a big problem. And now I got off topic there. What was I thinking? What was the question again?
Cover crops. Cover crops.
So I like the clover for cover crops. So I'm okay with cover crops. Now there was another thing you asked about.
No-till. No-tilling.
I love no-till. I love no-till. I've always loved no-till since is the first time it was introduced to me. I think we're looking for 100 million acres now in no-till in the US. And basically, if you are doing a no-till, you have to understand how to manage no-till. I mean, just because you're not tilling doesn't mean that you're not going to, you'll eventually, if you will manage it, you can control your weeds pretty easy. But what are you using as the cover on your no-till? I'm a hardwood chip, square chip only on my no-till, but I love it. It's a great way for, I don't care if you've got a little bitty garden in the back or if you've got a major field. If you want to do it, embrace it, learn about it, and you won't be sorry.
Okay, awesome. I had another question as you were just talking and we were speaking about, I hear often in hemp and cannabis, this misunderstanding that we don't need pesticides or that we don't need that, there are no insects or, mold is not necessarily an issue. You can kind of speak to what you see as far as common problems that maybe are not spoken about enough or, maybe farmers are not paying attention to.
Yes. I want to say that I was thinking when you said that, it rang a bell with me. Say it again so I can ring that bell again.
That there's a lot of people that assume that we don't need pesticides with hemp.
Yeah. So look, who manages insects in the wild? The plants themselves. If a plant is healthy, it's going to be more resilient against disease, mold, and insects attacking it. If that little old boar comes over here and his feet temperature are off, he's going to attack that plant because he knows it's sick and weak. If they're right, he's going to move on to another tree. So when it comes to insects and hemp, I planted in 2019, I planted a crop of hemp out of cycle. I'm always toying with plants, and I planted it on December the 28th. I planted the second crop on January the 5th in the dead of winter of North Carolina. So waiting for them to die, they didn't. They got bit back by frost quite often, but they continue to survive. And I've got pictures of them from babies all the way to the top. They ended up over 12 feet tall. And so I denied them any support of water. I did not supply them any support of food, and nor did I provide them any insect or disease treatment. And when I cut them down, they had no major insect issues at all, no damage, maybe a little bit, maybe less than 1%. And were strong and big. Now, whenever I unearthed them, the root systems were massive. Okay, so now why do I and my 50 acres, my 100 acres, my 200 acres of hemp, do I have to have everything on? Because I've got so much hemp there and I'm worried to death and I'm going to lose my investment. So I've got to do all of these things and I got to stay on top of it. Well, I get that too, and I somewhat agree with that. You want to be proactive, you want to train, you're doing a high valued crop, so give it things as that plant would benefit from in its cycle of life. So yes, that's where I stand on that.
Okay. Any other questions that have come in? Oh, I see another one here. Your success with no-till, both for fiber and CBD, or fiber and grain. Sorry.
I don't know that you, if you're doing a no-till and you're doing fiber, you're going to be growing a lot of fiber if you're growing fiber, any amount of fiber. So it's going to be quite a job to be no-till. As we do a lot of that now with Roundup, and Roundup Ready soybeans and all that, we don't till the field, we don't do anything. We go out there and we put that glyphosate all over it, and then we come back and slice and put the seed in. Okay, you call that no-till. But what did we just do? We had to use the chemicals to knock down the Roundup, to knock down the weeds to get it in and then get that crop going fast enough so that they shade them out. So
I'm confused, I think, by what you said. Maybe I misunderstood you. You said it's going to be a lot of work to do no-till on larger acres for fiber and grain?
Right. If I'm doing a small crop of cannabis, I could absolutely do it with no-till. And if I wanted to set up an acre or 2 acres or 3 acres, and see, I think the boutique growers of the world of America are going to be the growers of the future for hemp as well as cannabis. You start getting into biomass, you get, I don't need 1,000-acre farm. I need a bunch of 50s and 100s. Okay. So I think, that you have challenges there when you're getting a big crop to not let the weeds overtake it. And if you're in a no-till and you don't have a no-till established field, and you can't use Roundup, you can burn it off with other type things and get out there and try to get it in. But at some point that fiber's got to shoot up pretty high so it can outrun the weeds and then shade out the weeds.
I guess that would probably be key. That's what I've seen a lot on social media that's posted lately is, this comparison on weeds and how fast they got cover. But I think depending on, I would assume how close it's planted, right?
Right. We planted some lifter that is doing wonderful this year as far as it's helping support weed management. Now we ran our tractor through there until it got up about a little bit past knee high and did hand management. And then all of a sudden when it takes off, that was the end of us having to do any weed in that field, while other genetics that were smaller in their maturity or on their way to maturity, allowing more light in, had more weeds. And you cannot grow hemp and have weeds all in it and expect to have a good crop, because that's a habitat for insects, habitat for disease, and a habitat for competition for sunlight and all the things that are competing with each other. It's weed on weed,
Right. Tom, I don't know if you're still on. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, I know that you've got quite the experience in the farming space and agriculture space. I saw your camera just went off. Aha.
Sorry, I was actually putting something in the chat. In our region, now in Missouri, we're gonna have some small growers on CBD. Obviously, like everyone else, that took a hit this year with the depression in prices and that. But in our area specifically, the fiber model is going to fit into what we're doing already. We're not a tobacco state. We're not moving from tobacco into the CBD, into the hemp. So fiber really on a large scale is what's going to be driving it here in our region, our area. And so that's the real question is, we're working with a group and we're trying to build that and trying to build relationships with industry. We're having a little trouble here because and maybe Billy is familiar with this, something called dicamba. And so that's we're basically just sitting in park because of dicamba. One day, hopefully, smarter, cooler heads will prevail and we'll get rid of that. But that's really going to be the driver in our area, in our region, is fiber on a large scale, the economies of scale, and really getting that accomplished. And so where are we moving on the fiber? I know there's demand, and yet we're still not there. So where do you see us being if we can get to scale in 5 years and really pushing it out the door?
I think that we can get 5 years. Is that the question, Tom?
Yes, and a year or two, and then 5.
Yeah, I would say absolutely we can be there in 5, but we need every day between now and then to get there. We also need support by the banking industry and people to come in and help let us farmers do what we do best, and that's grow great crops and crops that can be brought in and brought into all these different arenas that hemp is usable for. Everybody complains about plastic all the time. We can replace it, and I've been able to replace it for quite some time. But on the other side of that is you have to have the industry ready to accept it. And I think a lot of people are still scared of hemp and fiber and CBD and all of it. and I think, you go into education, there's a lot of education has to be done, or people need to understand, CBD Training Academy is a great one for anybody who wants to know more. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Mandi, or not. But I think, if we take our time, if we take maybe our collective heads and put them together, and how we as a group can create a machine that can be logistically positioned for the people who have the interest. Now, what state did you say you were in?
I'm in Missouri, and I completely understand what you're saying about education, because let me tell you what, it was, we lobbied hard in the State House in Jefferson City, Missouri, and working through education with legislators that, didn't know the difference between hemp and devil's cabbage was really difficult. And so it took a long time and a real collective effort to get that through. There's a real hunger on the side of ag for something new. And like I said, for our region, we're traditionally cotton, soybeans, rice. And so that's our model. So it doesn't really fit the CBD model, but the fiber model, we're perfectly positioned to do it. It's, are the end users going to be there? Can we guarantee our growers the kind of contracts they need? We're working with a group now, but again, because of dicamba, we had to put a lot of seed into cold storage because you just can't do it. You cannot do it with dicamba because it will kill it, period.
Right. Go ahead, man.
You go ahead. I was going to ask what, I'm assuming it's fertilizer that's being used somewhere specific.
That's a weed killer.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
It is a weed killer that was supposed to have a new formulation to make it less volatile. And when I mean volatile, you spray it traditionally on where it's very high temperatures with temperature inversions, it would volatilize. So it'd go into a gaseous state and then it moves. This year we've seen where we thought it would move a mile or 2 or 5. It has moved 10, 20, 30 miles because the plume is so large. Imagine, and Billy, I'm sure you know this, but for everybody on the call that doesn't, imagine a bug bomb designed to cover the entire state of Rhode Island. And you set it off when it's going to be 100 degrees for 10 days and temperature inversions. It creates a plume that crosses the Mississippi River. It came out of Missouri into Mississippi, across the Missouri into Illinois for miles and damaged soybeans crops everywhere. So even when Illinois, where we farm, where we're not raising dicamba, we still can't raise hemp. We can raise fantastic fiber. We just have it will come, but we want to make sure the end users are there when we get to that space.
I was back in my landscape days, I was always trying to teach people what drift meant and how cautious we needed to be so we didn't have herbicide toxicity on our hollies or any of the ornamentals that we had within a given area. So on my farm, there's a little ridge, and at about 10:30 in the morning, if you're out there and you spray, and you can see drift. It's like the perfect picture. So I had like 96 employees with that company. Every one of them was required to come there once a month and go through spray class so that everyone else could watch the importance of how that off-target drift could damage everything that we were trying to do with just being careless. And so I got my, we started using funnels to fit over our sprays and things in that nature. And then also to take out the weeds when they were juvenile, to start breaking the cycle of seed production so that you could then start reducing the reoccurrence as the soil ran out of that historical deposit variety, whether it be crabgrass, Johnson grass, bahia, or whatever it may be, pigweed, all the ones that we have to fight and battle with. But I think we can get our, fiber. You just don't want all the weeds and everything else in it. So you do have a challenge there. And I look forward to working with the farmers here in the South on helping them get past that challenge. And that's why we're doing a lot of testing now on all these different varieties to see which one. Mandy's question earlier, is there a specific genetics for specific things that we want to create, whether it be wallboard or block? Is there one fiber over the other that will make that stronger? That's what we're hoping to find out this year as we continue to move forward with this testing.
What do you think a fair price is for farmers on fiber? Like, where do you think we should be aiming as far as price to farmers for fiber?
Well, if I had pulled up my paper, I actually have a financial breakdown of what we will offer farmers. I just don't have it on me. So I'd hate to misquote and get somebody excited about something that's wrong. Anybody that wants to call and ask me or text me, say, Billy, look those numbers up. I'd like to talk to you and get the answer. But they're making more than they are on corn. They're making more than they are on soybeans. Okay, so it is a crop that they can make money on. Now, are we going to be looking for farmers just to grow this crop, just to sell it on the commodity market, or are we going to set this industry up to where we are geographically positioned to handle volumes and we be the farmer, manufacturer, producer of the fibers of the future? And that's where I think we should be. Instead of me just growing a crop and hoping somebody buys it and beats me down for it, I want to take it from the field all the way to Mrs. Johnson's raincoat or her fabric that she just bought to cover her chairs. And I mean, not all, I don't want to create the fiber and the patterns and all that, but I want to be able to be the guy who can grow it, produce it, and get it to the manufacturers instead of having a bunch of people in between. Gives the farmers more confidence. In our program, we are going to pay the farmer, but we also want the farmer to benefit from the profits on it. So they're going to get more than what we pay them. They're going to get to share in part of the profit.
That's great. Great. Always going back to the farmers. Well, I really appreciate your time, Billy. I appreciate you joining us today. I did share both your phone number and your email in the contact information or in the chat. And so if anybody else does have questions or needs help reaching out, please don't hesitate to holler at me. I can assist there a little bit too. Billy, are you going to be traveling? Are you going to be at the Raleigh hemp event or anything like that? Where
probably won't. We're right in that cycle of testing every week and going to all the farms, and this next Tuesday we're out preparing our equipment for harvest and expanding on how we can make it better, clearer and cleaner. You know, there's been a disconnect between the, and I've seen it since the beginning, between the extractor and the grower of, okay, what kind of extraction system do you have that does the filtering? Okay, I don't think filtering has come up to the standards that needs to be in place to handle hemp. I don't believe the farmer knows how clean their product should be to get to that extractor. So I think the extraction company and the growers should come together and know where we need to be to keep things clean. And the group Benchmark, which you know with Joe and PF Hemp in South Carolina, are working and collaborating together to iron out these early things that are causing a little bit of, you know, soreness. But yeah, is there anyone on the site, if I may ask, unless we're on time crunch, that is currently growing hemp?
Yeah, there's quite a few growing hemp. Gary?
Yes.
Gary's growing. Tom?
I like your picture there behind.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find out where it was taken. You don't recognize it, do you? I'm thinking maybe your way.
Looks like up in the holler up down where we used to get a little drink of moonshine for. Looks like.
They always look familiar after a little moonshine. Gary, if you want to introduce yourself, you're more than welcome to. Anybody else on here that's growing, I'd love to have you introduce yourself as well. But go ahead, Gary.
Sure. I'm Gary Sykes. I'm a farmer in North Carolina. We've been working with a cooperative of farmers here in the state and looking at quite a bit of production for fiber for 2022. So excited about that. We have some really good contracts, and we're looking at 15 cents a pound for conventionally grown, 30 cents a pound for certified organic. So
For certified organic, 30 cents a pound for. Okay, yeah, I'd like to talk to you right here in our neck of the woods.
I would love very much to. I've got your email. So
Good, good.
thank you, Mandy.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
absolutely. Tom, would you like to introduce yourself? I guess you kind of did, spoke about the hemp you were growing. Anybody else? Matt, Matt, I don't know if you're growing any. John, I know that you've been working on a farm. I don't know if you have acreage in this year. So yeah, I think that's it. Those two. Everybody else has left. But yeah, Tom and Gary are definitely growing right now.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I'm sure that we could go on, but thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate the knowledge. For everybody else that's on, I'll send out a link and a transcribed notes so that you guys will have some information. Please don't hesitate to holler at me. Also, within this week, you guys will be getting emails. So you already have some of you that are members or on our advisory board. I sent you a link to create a profile on our new platform. You just have to go in and accept it. It is very early in the process of uploading stuff, but our team has started to upload. We have maybe 10 events uploaded, maybe 50 articles and 20 videos. But what it's really cool is it will show you all the privileges that we have right now. So you can kind of see where you can post projects, where you're looking to raise capital, what your information looks like. You can filter it and send it to different people. The coolest part is when you leave here, it has a chat option. So anybody on this platform or anybody that logs into the meetings moving forward, you'll be able to just chat with back and forth, and it creates a channel for you guys to connect with each other. And so I'm really excited about that. So I will kind of help walk through some of that as we roll this out, but just you guys know that we did send out some invites. You guys are welcome to get in and play with it, and then hoping to launch and be officially filled up or have our profile filled up or platform filled by the 1st, so that we'll be ready for Raleigh. And then again, a reminder for any of you that are in Raleigh or in North Carolina, Michelle and I are going to be staying a week after the conference to go out and visit people. So Billy, I would love to come out and visit you.
I would like to have that, and you'll probably be coming to probably Halcyon and
Yep.
Benchmark.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll probably come down there and see you there.
Okay, good. Perfect. Joe's been trying to talk me into coming down his way. And so we intentionally rented a car. In fact, I think I'm going to rent a little sports car for us. So go play around and visit people. So we'll be leaning on you too, Ross and Gary. So anyways, thank you very, very much, guys. I'm excited to have had you on today. Thank you for joining me today, Billy. And then don't hesitate to, if you need anything, Billy, holler at me.